He gives the example of an American composer who described his work by saying, "You are in an ecstatic state, to such a point that you feel as though you almost don't exist. I have experienced this time and again," he says, "my hand seems devoid of myself, and I have nothing to do with what is happening. I just sit there watching it in a state of awe and wonderment, and the music just flows out of itself." Ecstasy is a Greek word that means literally to stand outside oneself. And as I listened to this lecture, I thought back to opening night at that French restaurant when I was so anxious about my performance that I did not stand outside myself. I was standing inside myself, so deeply inside myself that I couldn't see my customer needed a fork. But not the composer. The composer was outside himself. He was watching his hand jot down musical notes on a sheet of paper as if his hand belonged to someone else. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi says this may sound like some kind of a romantic exaggeration. But actually, he says, our nervous system is capable of processing only about 110 bits of information per second. And in order to hear me and understand what I'm saying, he adds, you need to process about 60 bits per second. That's why you can't understand more than two people talking to you at the same time. So when you are completely engaged in the creative process, as this man was, you don't have enough attention left over to monitor how your body feels or to think about your problems at home. You can't even feel that you are hungry or tired. The needs of your body disappear. Your identity disappears from consciousness because you don't have enough attention to do this thing really well and also think about yourself. Your existence is temporarily suspended. What creates the experience of flow, he says, is that moment when the challenge is great and your skills are equal to the challenge. Like the hypothetical waiter of the waiters and waitresses competition in Las Vegas who has to serve a dozen tables at the same time, but who is so good at her job she can do it without thinking. An Olympic ice skater describes it like this. It was just one of those programs that clicked. I mean, everything went right. Everything felt good. When that happens, it's almost as though you don't have to think. It's like you're on automatic pilot. You ever had an experience like that? David Powers was telling me about the last time they did this big Christmas special at First Baptist Richmond, and he was out in the courtyard with a cast and crew of dozens, maybe hundreds, maybe thousands. They had the lights up. It was late at night. They were working, trying to wrap up this project. He said when they finally got finished, he looked at his watch and couldn't believe how late it was. He had been completely focused on the project such that hours seemed like minutes. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi says that when we are in a state of flow, we are completely involved in what we are doing, focused, concentrated. We have a sense of ecstasy, of being outside everyday reality. We have great inner clarity. We know what needs to be done and how to do it. We know that the activity is doable, that our skills are adequate to the task. We have a sense of serenity, with no worries about ourselves and a feeling of growing beyond the boundaries of ego. We have a sense of timelessness. We are so thoroughly focused on the present that hours seem to pass by in minutes. We are motivated by the act itself. Whatever produces flow becomes its own reward. Now, I've taken my time getting there, but I believe that all of this has something to do with today's gospel reading. the one in which James and John come asking Jesus if they can sit on thrones at his right and left hand when he comes into his glory. What were they thinking? They were thinking about what would make them happy, about what would give them that smug, self-satisfied feeling as they were sitting there on thrones to the right and left of the exalted Lord. The spotlight would be focused on him, of course, but some of that light would spill over onto them. People would be saying, wow, those two must be really special. Look at them up there, sitting on thrones to the right and left of the glorified Lord. But listen to the way Jesus responds to their request. He says, you don't know what you're asking. And if I could interject, I think he might be saying, you want happiness, you want success, you're going about it all wrong. Real happiness doesn't come from thinking about yourself. It comes from thinking about others. I'm reminded of that passage from Philippians chapter 2, where Paul says, let the same mind be in you that was in Christ Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God as something to be exploited. Rather, he emptied himself, taking the form of a slave, being born in human likeness. And being found in human form, he humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. If you have ears to hear, you can hear that it is an experience of ecstasy, of standing outside the self, like that composer, that ice skater, even that waitress in Las Vegas. Jesus was so focused on our needs that he wasn't paying attention to his own needs. As Paul says, he emptied himself. He humbled himself. He got caught up in the flow of selfless, sacrificial service. So when he says to James and John, are you able to drink the cup that I drink, or to be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with? He may be telling them how to achieve true ecstasy by denying yourself, taking up your cross, and following him.